does it look like when a musician wants to weave social good into what they do? That is the question that we're answering on this podcast. It's called It's Giving, and it's hosted by me, Ingela Travers-Hayward. This week, I am talking to Brian Weitz, although you might know him better as Geologist from the band Animal Collective. I first met Brian back in 2022. I had been connected to him because I had heard that he was really passionate about harm reduction. And so when we were at the same festival out in Seattle, we thought, let's meet, come to the booth and see what we do with our own nonprofit. This must be the place. He came over, and I would say less than half an hour later, him and my co-director Perry are suddenly trolling around the grounds of the festival, passing out free Narcan to anyone who wanted some. I, to this day, still don't know who was more taken aback. Me with the fact that Brian just jumped in and was willing to start helping us do this, or all of the Animal Collective fans that were sitting waiting for them to go on, but were suddenly being approached by one of its members and educated on the importance of Narcan. In any case, it was a no-brainer to have Brian on the show. He has just been instrumental in our growth as a nonprofit. And so I wanted to really talk to him about why he cares about harm reduction, where that started. And so that's what you're going to hear all about in this episode. On a broader note, I just wanted to thank everyone for subscribing, rating, reviewing the podcast and the first 2 episodes that came out last week. It is very surreal that these are out in the world, and even more surreal that people are taking the time to listen to them. I hope that you really enjoy them. And if you do want more, Perry writes a really beautiful essay each week through our Substack that goes out and just talks about that week's guest. And it also gives you more resources on the causes that our guest talks about. So thank you again for your support. And I really hope you enjoy Brian's episode. Bye. Brian, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I appreciate it. So what we're all talking all about is the intersection between music and social justice, how they work together. And so you obviously were someone who we wanted to talk to. I think my first sort of question, wanting to start out maybe towards the beginning of your career, is when did you sort of realize that the intersection between those things were possible?
I mean, as a child of the 80s and 90s, I think we grew up just seeing that was a thing. Like I remember, I think it happened in Philadelphia where I grew up, the Live Aid concert, and I don't know, We Are the World, so things like that. And then environmentalism was a big thing with musicians in the 90s, and I think because that was my background, before I did music full time, I got a degree in environmental policy, and anytime there was the chance, it was the early 2000s when Animal Collective, when we had the profile that people were asking us questions about our opinions. And so at that time, coming out of working in climate change policy, and I wasn't high up or anything I had a position in the Senate, but I could speak intelligently about it. And so, yeah, it always just felt natural to me. I wouldn't say it felt natural to us as a band in general, but, and still doesn't. Like some people are really find it distasteful when musicians offer their opinions about things. So as a band, it's still, after 30 years, a struggle to know when we speak and we don't. But
that actually, I mean, it jumps ahead. That was one of the big things that I wanted to talk to you about is, obviously there's a lot going on in the world right now. And so it's like, for someone, when you have this platform, how do you decide when you want to talk about something, when to address something, how to address it, raise funds for? How do you pick and choose? And is that, it's difficult, it sounds like.
It's really difficult. Let's put difficult in quotes.
Yes, of
in
course.
air
Yes,
quotes,
yes,
Like it's a privileged
in the grand
position
scheme of things,
to be in. And there are certain things where it's not so much like your opinions on the matter that are difficult. It's like the PR thing aspect of it. None of us are naturals at that. And none of us grew up with social media. Yeah. So that's been a challenge, and it's not always enjoyable. And I mean, I don't know if my answers would I don't want to speak for the band, but and I don't know if my answers speak for everybody. I don't find actually speaking publicly to be that helpful to actually doing meaningful work. I find it a distraction almost. the idea of having a platform and making statements or trying to influence behavior, it is a privilege. I wonder if it was easier for some people when they don't get feedback. Like for a lot of musicians, like the environment was the only thing I ever spoke about, and then because the only thing I felt comfortable speaking about. We had fans. One particular fan who was Black had made addressed us on Instagram during the summer of 2020 after George Floyd was murdered, that it was isolating for our fans of color to always see us speaking out about something like the environment, and never speaking out about social justice issues. And I took that criticism to heart. And then that summer, there was a lot of instances of like saying something or posting something, and then within 30 seconds, someone would be like, "You're a day late on that. Things have shifted." That nonprofit that you're donating funds for, we decided literally within the last 24 hours. Someone said to me once, like, in the last 24 hours, that's no longer like a nonprofit. That's okay to. And I was just like, I don't understand how anybody like learns at this speed. Anything.
Yeah.
Like it's just happening too fast for me to give anything any critical thought to actually have meaningful experience that I learned from. It just seems like this is just feedback and comments, and before I knew it, that was all I was thinking about, was like, how is what I say or what we say as a band, like, are we saying the right thing today? And that's, I don't know if you're going to curse on this, but I was just like, this is a bullshit way to do this stuff. Not in general, like if you have the experience, then I think it's like, thank God for social media for a lot of things in terms of publicizing what people's lived experiences are right now. But if you don't and you're trying to learn on the fly, I don't find it that helpful.
I totally agree. And I think like what you were saying before, being able to do something versus just saying something, I think that feels different. Of course, like speaking out is really important, but the action, be it like the action itself or raising money for, I think that it can feel like you can sort of see the tangible impact, And so I guess I'm curious, like, is there one thing in your mind towards the beginning of your career where you were like, okay, I can see the impact of what I'm doing tangibly, what I've raised, I can see I've raised money for something, or I've volunteered my time or something like that. Do you remember sort of a moment towards when you were starting off where it's like, I can see it?
It's harder when we were starting off for me to remember it.
It
was a long time ago.
We're old, yeah.
Animal Collective has been out for over 25 years at this point.
Yeah.
There were moments where we partnered with a lot of ocean conservation stuff, and it's hard for me I don't think I ever asked for like tangible amounts, but we would donate portions of certain record sales to causes, and we would sometimes like do music, like we made music for this group here called the Ocean Foundation, like just giving them music that then they can put on their website. And so you could see like a tangible publicity impact. Plus One, which is an organization, I'm sure it'll come up on this podcast again.
Yeah.
When you donate $1 from every ticket sale to a cause of your choosing, like with that you can see tangible stuff. You know what the dollar amount is. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how much of a relationship you have with your audience. I'd say there have been many conversations over the years, especially about the environment or the ocean, where I've had conversations with people where they mention it, and in recent years about the harm reduction work as well. And to me, like even one conversation like that feels like a tangible impact.
That makes sense. And I think like, we sort of talked around it, but I'm curious, even though I know this is probably going to be, there's a huge answer to this, why the environment? What is it that you care so passionately about, or why do you care so passionately about?
Well, these days, it's not even, I would say, the thing that I'm the most passionate about, partially because of burnout, partially because of being self-conscious that I'm just not as up on things as I used to be. But when I went to college in the late, it was 97, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do in college other than I wanted to go to New York and be part of the music scene and do college radio. And I went scuba diving that year in the ocean for the first time. And when I was a kid, I always said I was going to be a marine biologist. And so I stayed interested in that stuff all through my life. But I was, actually starting to scuba dive. I was just like, I just want to be in the ocean. I want to do this. And Columbia, and I went to school at Columbia. They were, even in the 90s, they were very involved in climate change research. And it was hard in the 90s to not, again, just the time that we grew up in, climate change was at the forefront of things. So, and since I didn't know what I wanted to do in college, really, I was just like, well, I am interested in this now, and they have a lot of great climate change research. So I just started throwing myself into that in college. And, but it was just the connection to the ocean, I would say, first and foremost. Like, my dad's family's from Savannah, Georgia. So I spent every summer down there at the beach and the ocean, and then, like I mentioned, scuba diving. So, but now I feel so, when people ask me my opinions, I'm like, I couldn't even tell you what is in the last climate agreement. And back in the 90s, it was like Kyoto, and now it's just like Paris, Copenhagen. I don't even know, Rio. Like, where are we? And like, it seems like every year and a half, people are like, we're done with that one. Has America pulled out? Or, so I'm embarrassed to even be in those conversations around my old friends in DC about environmental policy.
I mean, if it's okay to talk about, you mentioned it, harm reduction has now become something that you care deeply about. How did that become something that you wanted to help out with, and in what capacity?
Yeah, well, so in the summer of 2020, when as a band, Animal Collective was like, we want to be part of voicing our support for the changes that people are calling for, and living here in DC, it was like the protests here were crazy, and and I was out there, and it was just at a certain point, somebody who's close to us said, you guys are trying to be something that you're not at the moment, which is like people that are educated on police reform and and systemic racism. It doesn't mean you don't care about it, but like trying to be the guys on social media that like are telling other people what they should think is just like, again, like I said earlier, like I had to look in the mirror and be like, I'm full of shit. Like I'm doing this almost for like, I want to be on the team and I believe in it, but like, it just feels like I'm supposed to be saying something rather than listening to people and following their lead and learning. Like, it feels like I'm in a position where like, what the primary action required of me now is to like learn as quickly as possible and then say it. And I didn't feel like that was helping anything. So this person that was close to us was like, there are ways that you can talk about things that are more personal to you, where you can be yourself. Like, there's a lot of environmental justice issues. And so we thought about that again, but at that point I was like, I haven't really worked in this field in 15 years. And like, I know the broad strokes, but so I just decided at that moment, it was like everybody was saying abolish the police and put your trust in mutual aid. I was saying it too. And like, I wasn't part of a mutual aid group. Like, I think almost every single one of my friends that posted that on Instagram was not part of a mutual aid group, or if they were, it was within the last 2 weeks that they had just joined it. So, so that's what I found one in my neighborhood, and I just decided to get off of Instagram and stop posting, and just for my own, I was like, if I'm going to say that mutual aid is an effective cause for change, I want to see it. And the best way to see it is to be part of it. So, and I wanted to learn more about my neighbors, like I live in DC, which is a heavily gentrified town, but there are still pockets of the historical population here, people of color. And so I joined I was at home all the time anyway with my kids on Zoom, and I decided to volunteer time for a hotline where people would call and they would say like, these are the groceries I need, like elderly people that didn't have, that were poor and couldn't really leave their apartments and couldn't pay for deliveries. And so I would take these deliveries and I would send them out to another member of the team who would purchase things and then drop them off. and that put my faith. I was like, I don't know if it solves all problems, but like it's solving this problem. And it was really beautiful to see. And I became part of this community and this network. And then since we had the infrastructure built for that hotline when the vaccines came out, and, there was an issue with like, well, people with means are able to sort of game the system, and, they're getting the vaccines before the most vulnerable population. We decided to take calls to get people vaccine appointments. And through that, I met a doctor in our neighborhood. The mutual aid group, in addition to the activities I'm describing, also we live close to, you don't see them now. I know you just drove into DC. They've all been cleared, but like around the station and on a lot of the national, like, because for people that don't know, we're recording this on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
There's a lot of federal land where there were encampments, like unhoused encampments set up, 50 to 100 tents sometimes on a lawn. And so people were giving supplies out to them. And this doctor on one of these calls for the vaccine appointment said, we're seeing a lot of people using drugs, and we're seeing a lot of overdoses, and we're not seeing enough Narcan. And she teaches, it's called like the street medic program at, I think it's at Georgetown Medical School. She's a doctor there. And she said, does anybody want to learn how to distribute Narcan, and you can start going out with the people that are handing out meals and toilet paper, and you'll distribute Narcan. And if you see an overdose, and it was one of those moments where I thought back to what my friend had said about, like, if you're going to take action, like maybe do it from a place that feels personal to you. And, well, I can't claim to have been active in harm reduction until that point. Like, there are people very close to me that, have struggled with addiction, been in and out of rehab. And, even the ones who are clean today, like, have said to me, like, if I was using when fentanyl was in the supply, like, there's no way I'd be here, So, it was not again, I wasn't like active in harm reduction, but like addiction and overdoses were like a part of my life for the, good 15, 20, I mean, going back to the first person I knew that overdose was in high school, and I know the kids since I was in kindergarten. So sadly I had a lot of, experience with it. And so there was something personal there. I was like, I've been seeing, on bus stops, like, hey, learn how to use Narcan, save a life. And it was something that had been on my mind, like, I should do that, At Animal Collective shows, we have people pass out all the time. It's usually from like party drugs, and they get dehydrated. But like before the opening band plays, it's not uncommon for like 3 people to be on the ground. Yeah. And so I had wanted to learn how to have Narcan like within arm's reach on the stage. So this felt like a perfect opportunity with this mutual aid group that I was just manning the phones for, to actually get out there, take a training, and do it. And there weren't that many of us that wanted to do it, that felt comfortable. I mean, I didn't even know. It was probably 6 months after that I reversed my first overdose. I didn't know how I was going to react in that situation. So, but yeah, it felt great to get out there and to do it and to learn about it. And it felt, again, like this has been a bit more relevant to my life than environmental policy for the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. So that's why I switched to not like switched, but that's how harm reduction became the thing that felt more urgent to me, with the fentanyl crisis and everything.
Well, and I think, something that, to be honest, you helped us think a lot about is like, remove the idea of how you should feel doing this work or what you should feel like you should be doing, and just, do it in the way that you can. And I think a lot of people, have this belief that I need to do the biggest thing and I need to do the loudest and I need to make sure everyone knows about it. And it's like, it doesn't need to be like that. You can just do it. You can get off Instagram and just sort of go help. And maybe you're making a difference in the lives of a few small people, but that's still a big deal too. Yeah. It doesn't need to be this big proclamation every time, And I think that's a really important thing that we thought about, and yeah, I think.
I mean, it does help to speak about it. I do still feel torn about that. Like, for a while I was like comfortable not speaking about
Yeah.
the work because I was like, I just want to do the work for my neighborhood, for my community. This is the way I think, I didn't want to be one of those people that is always posting the right thing on their Instagram stories, but then like they don't do anything else, that didn't feel good to me. Again, I think that has value, to spread the word. It just didn't feel like, I didn't feel like I was adding value in that context because I was constantly being like, well, what's the feedback on the thing I said? And did I say the right thing? And I was like, I was really just thinking about myself.
Yeah.
Like
So do you
in
think
those
like
moments. But
what influence do you think that Instagram has on this sort of thing? Is it?
I mean, I think it does have in it. Like
Yeah.
we occasionally, when we've done tours where we have Narcan at every show and we invite local harm reduction groups to give, like we post about it on Instagram and people are really thankful and they learned about it. And, I met a lot of people that have been trained or gotten Narcan at an animal collective show and used it, but they might not have known about it if we didn't post about it on Instagram. So again, I don't think, I mean, and there's so many things like, what's happening in Gaza. Like, thank God there was Instagram and TikTok for people to show what was happening on the grounds. Like there's a lot of, I see a duality in it, you know what I mean? So it's just about how you as a person, like it wasn't helpful for me. So, and I didn't feel like I was being helpful to others in that moment using that as the tool.
Okay.
So.
That makes sense. And I think like this was something else that I think ties into that. And I wanted to talk to you specifically about this. It's, 20 years ago, yes, or I mean, more than that, there's Live Aid, there's benefit concerts, very common. Now it feels like there's a lot bigger of an infrastructure for if a band wants to raise awareness, raise funds. I think like, Plus One is incredible and it's changed so much. Why do you think that is? Is this just like a byproduct of, the internet now exists? It's a bigger tool of our lives. It's easier to do this. Or, is the world way crazier, it seems, than it was at some point? And so we want to make sure there are more avenues for, if people want to raise money, let's make it really easy for them. I guess like, I'm curious why you think there's so many more ways that a band can do this in this day and age.
That might be a better question for someone who talks to industry people on the back end a little bit more than I do.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of like social entrepreneurs, I mean,
but did there used to be? I think that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, like, I have a friend that does like social. He started a nonprofit in the 90s for like just a town in South Africa that he visited while he was traveling.
Okay.
And he started helping their school system out. And it's like now I feel like he, as far as I can tell, I think he spends more time like lecturing on social entrepreneurship, which I know, despite using that word, it's not for profit, but then maybe he does running the day-to-day of his nonprofit, there just seem like all things, maybe things become buzzwords and then they become college programs. And I do think tech has allowed bands to do a lot of things. I mean, it helps you get your music out there in certain ways, maybe not like a way that monetizes it, but because all this stuff really does go back to, I mean, I think people in the 60s felt probably this way too, that like there were a lot more avenues and opportunities and maybe responsibilities for bands to speak up. And they could probably point to television and as something. So, I suppose maybe it's tech and the internet. Yeah, it's a startup culture, I guess.
You think because there's that ease, do you feel like, and maybe you don't want to answer, which is totally fine, but do you feel like bands have more of a responsibility now than they used to because there is that ease, there is that tech to help that happen? That like if you go on tour,
responsibility to fundraise or to speak?
Either. But I mean, to me, the I kind of look at it as it's quite easy if you go on tour, at least from my vantage point, it's you go on tour, it is quite simple to fundraise, to add 25 cents to your ticket or this, that, or whatever. Do you feel like if a band is about to go do a big tour, that there is that responsibility?
I don't know if I think about it that way.
Yeah.
I think I try and just think about my own responsibility.
Yeah.
The idea of like you have a responsibility to speak out or to fundraise, I get where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I feel responsibility just as like a citizen or a human. And you can't be everything to everybody. So like, if you speak out about one thing, you're often expected to speak out about another thing that maybe you don't feel as educated on. And again, things move in like you said the wrong thing yesterday or last night, now like the facts have changed, or I just can't keep up, what I mean? So like, I feel very good about like the work I do, and I that's kind of all I have at the end of the day. It's like, maybe I didn't say the right thing on Instagram, or maybe like, like I never commented on like Israel and Gaza. I was just like, and at that point, I'm not even sure I was commenting on harm reduction. I mean, it was just like, I'll live in DC. I'll go to like, if not now, rally. Like I'll like go and do things, but like I can't. My energy becomes too diluted and distracted when like it's through social media and when it's through public speaking, because I'm really like, all of a sudden my attention, instead of me putting, and this is like, I'm not saying this is inherent to everybody's experience. It's very, I wish I was better at this. Yeah. Like all of a sudden my focus, it turns inward, and that's like not where it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? So,
but I think it is a really sort of sage stance of like, I do the best I can. If someone's not able to do something, that's okay. Everyone's different. I think you can't set that expectation for everyone, and you can't fault them if someone's not doing the same as you, or if someone is doing more or doing less. It's just like, we're just all trying to get through it, the best we can. But I think like the last question I have is sort of, again, the world is a crazy place right now. In your opinion, if someone wants to try and help in some way, not even exclusively as a musician, just as a person in the world, you sort of did this trial and error of how can I help? How can I sort of feel like I'm connecting with my community and stuff? What advice do you have for someone who's like, I want to try and do something, but I just have no fucking idea what to do? What would you say?
Well, I think connecting with your community, knowing your neighbors. And to me, that's like, if you can find something that helps you, and I'm not even great at it. Like I forget the names of the people on this block sometimes, and I've lived on this block for 20 years. But to me, it was like I can only speak from my own experience, but it was like just doing something hyper local. Like even the mutual aid group that I'm part of is for like my ward. We have like our again, they're not there anymore. And we're kind of trying to figure out now where people are using drugs that we can get them the resources they need. But it was like, I would walk 9 blocks away from my house to an encampment, and like, that was where I did my work. And it wasn't hard to find, I just Googled certain things, and mutual aid groups always need helping hands. If you live in Ward 6 in DC and you want to distribute Narcan, we always need help. Ward 6 Mutual Aid, just look it up. So, it might be on Facebook, which is outdated at this point. Okay. I don't know. And I don't do that. I'm not like at the organizational level of like publicizing it. I'm just like, if you show up at this time and, every week on Sunday, I'll give you some Narcan and I'll teach you how to hand it out. And like, that's, and I'll teach you how to reverse an overdose, and like, that's the best I can do.
It's a lot to ask to have someone know how to use Narcan, but also know how to use a Facebook page. Like that's a tough skill set.
There seems to be a generational divide there.
Yeah. Well, Brian, thank you so much for doing this. Yeah, I think this is always so fascinating to hear about what you do. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for talking, and it's always inspirational to hear about what you all do.